I think Nvidia could squeeze out something that trades blows with the leaked RDNA 5 flagship that I've shown. However, technically the fully enabled chip could have around 200 compute units. They're not competing with something with 3 times the compute units of a 9070 XT. Welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Tom. This episode's lead sponsors are The Farmer's Dog, fresh dog food, where you can get 60% off through a link below. There's also Wondershare Recover at V14, AI-powered data recovery. You can check out below to support the channel. And of course, cdkeyoffer.com, where you can get Windows 11 Professional for $24. Dan, how are you doing?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
I'd say I'm doing good in the second half of Sunday. I got to be honest, it was a pretty crappy week. I don't even think I've told you half of it involving me getting rear-ended. That was great. I know. Awesome. Very fun. It seems like it's going to be totally fine. And obviously no one was hurt at all, or I wouldn't have been so joking about it. But on top of that, there was like another thing with insurance. So I'll be calling my agent for about 2 things on Monday, and then an unresponsive neighbor after their trees damaging houses in the ice storm. I mean, there's just a lot of what else was there? Oh yeah, just something with plumbing probably, and then there's like a dozen things. It's been 1 week. It's been a lot. It's been a lot this week. I have a lot to talk to you about the next time we get on Age of Empires or something. But I don't know. I'm in a good mood now. So
well, that's a plus at least.
How are you doing?
You've already asked, but I'm pretty good.
I never remember any. Well, I don't really think about you. I just say it to be polite, yeah. And so
Dan,
I don't sometimes.
Yeah, Dan. By the way, I don't think about you.
But. Let's get to corrections. AI-generated Fish writes in and says, after the most recent die shrink, am I hearing correctly, here we go, Dan, that Tom and Dan have come around to this being a terrible year for laptops? This is the resident AI, well, he does have AI in his name, AI laptop hater. Same performance as last year for something a lot more and more money. No, I think Panther Lake is pretty competitive with Strix Halo. It's just we wish it was cheaper, but it is new and it does bring competition. Now there's like kind of Strix Halo performance in dozens of laptops to choose from instead of just the 2 that AMD had. And also Strix Halo laptops have gotten cheaper. And I still see plenty of decent deals on laptops. So no, AI-generated Fish, I'll let you speak for yourself, Dan, but I'll speak for myself here. No, I think this year is easily more interesting when it comes to laptops.
Yeah, the one thing I would say is the caveat that with like everything that needs to be caveated this year with like, yeah, RAM prices seem to be making everything more expensive, and that sucks. Not really sure how it's specifically a bad laptop year though in light of that. Like,
but if you
that's
look
just
close,
a kind of potentially crappy year in general. I don't think it's the tech's fault if it turns out to not be a good laptop year though.
But you can still sometimes find Panther Lake for below $2,000. I have seen it around $1,500, and that was something you just couldn't get last year. And a lot of AMD laptops are still pretty good deals right now. Again, I brought it up before. I've got like that geek book here that has 32 gigs RAM, 2 terabytes for I think under 1,300, under 1,400, 1,200 or something. Like there are still deals to be found. Most of our warnings about laptops specifically are, we're just worried it'll get a lot worse later this year. So if you need it, get it now. And there's, Nvidia laptops are kind of getting worse. But I guess from my perspective, actually, I don't really care about Nvidia laptops because I don't want a dedicated graphics card anymore, right?
Yeah, so. Yeah. I mean, with how powerful APUs are now from both Intel and AMD, and how Nvidia just doesn't seem to care at all about laptops anymore. Like, yeah, I mean, I feel like going with just APUs at this point is kind of the way to go.
And you have multiple options. I mean, You have like Kraken, which can do any AAA game at 60. Maybe it'll have to be 720p. Maybe you'll have to crank up FSR. You have Lunar Lake, which is still pretty great deals, and saying that better than that, actually. And then you still have some Strix Point deals, and then you go up to that to Panther. I mean, we have basically all AAA game capable sub $1,000 laptops, $1 to $1,400, $1,200 1080p 60 laptop APUs. Panther Lake, which I would say is kind of almost, I mean, and if the game's even remotely on the easier to run side, you're doing 1440p 60. And Strix Halo, which can often do 4K 60, honestly. So you kind of have, you don't have high end really, but you have at least mid range all the way down APU only, and they're just more reliable and double your battery life, or triple if it's Panther Lake. So no, I that's why I'm not that interested in dedicated graphics cards anymore. And
well, yeah,
anyone like me, this is the most interesting year to buy a laptop in your life.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really care about like the desktop replacement class of laptop, I suppose. So maybe it's a very down year for that market, but
was it worse than the previous years? Does anyone remember when the Blackwell laptops came out and they're like $5,000 for a 5090 laptop? I don't think we're worse than that this year.
Well, yeah, I mean, the reason I'm not interested in desktop replacement laptops is because I feel like there are so many trade-offs with a desktop replacement that I would rather just have a desktop. But
also remember, like when me and you were in college, at least when Maxwell came out, there were some pretty efficient laptop GPUs, I would say. And with Pascal, they went all the way up to the 1080, and I think it was just literally a 1080, called a 1080, same specs as a 1080. And those laptops would be $2,000 to $3,000. I mean, a lot of these laptops now with the 5090, which is what is the desktop 4080, so that is what you would say is analogous to the Pascal laptop eras. Those are like $4,000 half the time now. So it's not just that we don't think it's worth it anymore because of how good APUs are. With AMD being raptured out of dedicated laptop GPU, Nvidia is just completely reasonably charging for these things, and so that also makes me just not interested in it.
Yeah, I mean, they're dedicated graphics. Sometimes it feels like they just add a number every year and keep the same card, where it's like, yeah, the 3050 and the 4050, it's almost the same thing at a certain point, but just not great.
Spiedelmer writes in and says, you said in the last podcast that reviewers said memory speed does not matter for the 9850X3D, but Digital Foundry found that it does. Okay, man, look, Digital Foundry found one game where it made a major difference, and that was Cyberpunk. And then they even showed benchmarks from Far Cry 6 that showed, I think, literally no difference in performance. And by the way, this is important, not between like DDR5, 6400, and 6000. Between 4,800 up to, I think, 6,000 or higher. And so I'm sorry to say that this disproves you need fast memory for the 9850X3D. We're just going to have to agree to disagree if that's what you think. That's not to say that faster memory might not eventually help. But right now, when you have to refinance your house to get fast enough RAM to make Arrow Lake even remotely competitive in gaming with AMD right now, comparatively, it is not a defining factor. It doesn't really matter for the 9850X3D. I mean, it's notable, the Cyberpunk example they found, but I don't think it changes. I think it'd be mischaracterizing things because it becomes kind of a yes-no thing. So are you now saying all reviews should say you should get faster RAM? Because if that's what you think, I disagree.
Yeah. And I'm going to have the rare third correction from me, Tom.
Uh-oh.
The person's name is Speed Lemur.
Not Spiedelmer.
Not Spiedelmer.
It's almost like a German. Mr. Spiedelmer.
And now we're going to get corrections from Germans in the comments. Like that
how
is
great I am.
not how that does not sound like a German word, Tom.
Yeah, okay. Not the accent. We agree the accent's good.
The accent was perfect.
I agree. It might not be a German sounding last name at all. But yes, that is the accent you get if you work at a German company for many years, like I did. Okay, let us now move on to the first story here with story number 1. Intel Titan Lake to get Nvidia graphics plus Nova Lake AX iGPU tiles are confirmed to be manufactured on TSMC 2 nanometer. Almost a couple weeks ago by now, was conversing with Intel sources about Panther Lake and XE, I was able to get more bonus info than I expected. Specifically, it was regarding Nova Lake AX and the future of Intel Nvidia APUs. Let's start first with Nova Lake AX, because it should launch next year. These are the competitors to AMD's Halo APUs, and we have been given the green light, or I was, I guess, 2 weeks ago, to reveal that their big 16 or 32 XE core tiles, remember Panther Lake is 12 right now, will actually be manufactured on N2P. This will give Intel a big node advantage, honestly, against Medusa Halo, which will use a 3-nanometer node. Furthermore, it is still XE3, just with a P, so the design should be very similar to Panther Lake, and that means what we've seen with rock-solid driver support with Panther Lake should not change next year with these potential Medusa Halo killing APUs from Intel. That is, of course, in large part because NVIDIA, I'm sorry, I skipped over one sentence here. Basically, that was just, and we expect this to continue, that this architecture will be well supported. Now, we expect this to be well supported long term because NVIDIA will be taking over Intel's GPU tiles. We expect the first Intel NVIDIA chip to come with Hammer Lake. Our sources a couple weeks ago said that the first fruits of the partnership between NVIDIA and Intel will actually come with Titan Lake in 2029. And again, I like to do this because, of course, most people don't remember all of these rumored architecture names. Right now, we're on Panther Lake. Next year, you'll get Nova Lake APUs. That's 28 or 27. And then in 28, you'll get Razor Lake, which is kind of just Nova Lake Plus. And then after that, you get Titan Lake.
Hammer Lake.
Right? And then Hammer Lake after that, which will be second generation, supposedly, NVIDIA tiles. Well, some SKUs are listed with Titan Lake in 2029 to use XE3P tiles, showing, again, no change for years to the architecture Intel will be using. The largest such tile will have 16 XE cores, clearly showing that Intel is retreating from using XE for their big APUs sooner rather than later. Perhaps this could even be a reused tile from Nova Lake AX, just using the same tile for years and years and years for cheaper APUs while using NVIDIA in the top end. But again, that is kind of a good thing if you plan to buy an Intel APU now, because this means your drivers will be well supported for a very long time. And it's also very exciting because that means when we get to Zen 7 Grimlock, already just one generation after Zen 6, we may have NVIDIA Intel APUs bringing even more competition to AMD's Halo products. All right, Dan, what do you think?
Well, it's... yeah, I guess the fact that they're on the same architecture for going on, I don't know how long at this point, but it is, really shows the graphics thing isn't working out. I suppose, even though their iGPUs are honestly panning out great, and I'm very excited to see how 32 Z cores performs. But
the ditching of dedicated graphics seems to mean their APUs will actually work well now.
That's true, and I do think part of that. Wonder how much of that motivation is just this deal, like with NVIDIA, that they could get, or like which came first, the chicken or the egg, or that deal are their graphics failing. Because I don't know. I mean, I think NVIDIA kind of needed to break into the APU space at a certain point, and Intel is obviously the perfect partner for them for that. But
especially since N1X seems to be almost going nowhere. I mean, where is it? Where is the NVIDIA APU? I leaked pictures of 2 years ago. Pictures, not just specs, pictures. I mean, my God.
Yeah, my bets at this point are that N1X is not coming out because I think it would just be kind of unimpressive at this point. But, maybe we'll see N2X or whatever the follow-up to it is.
Yeah, now, in terms of anything else to drill down on this stuff, I mean, we've talked about Panther like a ton. I don't think we need to get into any of that. I don't think we need to get into, like we just discussed at the NVIDIA side of these APUs, until we know the specs of these APUs that are 3 years away. There's nothing to say except that they exist. I think, and if you want to get into the whole XE, this more evidence of that Intel's basically done developing new major architectures for their graphics. A new die shrink came out last week where the first 10, 20 minutes is us drilling down into that. So join the Patreon and you'll get access to that. But then the one thing I would add on here is, again, how big of an advantage and how powerful really Nova Lake AX may be. Right now, Panther Lake has 12 XE cores. So 32 divided by 12. We're looking
that's
at
almost 3x, right?
Yeah, it's 2.67 times the cores. And it'll be at least a plus architecture better, which I am hearing it should be a little better. I don't want to give a number, but it is better. So it could be like 3 times the performance. In fact, the only red flag I can think of with it is the fact that it seems, at least in the documents I've seen and leaked, that it has an LPDDR5X memory controller, 256-bit, whereas Medusa Halo will offer LPDDR6 offerings. But who knows? Maybe that's just going to be like $4,000 super versions, and then most Medusa Halo won't have that. I don't know. We'll have to see. It's too soon to say how much of an advantage that could really be. But when you add all that up, I mean, Panther Lake, I mean, let's say plugged into the wall, because let's be fair, Panther Lake has a pretty notable node advantage already, actually, over Strix Halo. Like, I think it's like Strix Halo is probably like 30-40% faster if you really push the power through it versus Panther Lake. Okay, well, even if we say that, we've got a node advantage in 3 times the cores of now. I don't know. RDNA 5, I think Medusa Halo might double performance. So let's just do the math. Let's assume no IPC increase for Intel, just to be fair, right? Or just to try to be conservative in AMD's favor here to make a point. So we do that, 2.667 divided by, let's assume Medusa Halo doubles performance over Strix Halo. To those who might wonder why I would say it'd be that much, well, they are, I think, doubling bandwidth at least, or if they go to LPDDR6, and then they're going from 40 to 48 CUs, so that's 20% more. But then RDNA 5 is probably 50% faster per compute unit from what I've been seeing than RDNA 3.5. So I think let's just call it double. Let's just assume AMD gets to double. Like let's even
that would beat it by about what, 20% if AMD doubles performance.
This is so funny. They're basically probably about the same. If I take 2.67 divided by 2 times 1.4, Halos over Panther Lake, I have maybe one wins by 5%. So I think they might be pretty evenly matched. Now, who knows if FSR 5 will be there, if XE super sampling support starts to slow down. I don't know. We can't declare one a winner or not, but it is close enough where this could be very interesting. I think more interesting than we expected.
Well, yeah, I mean, the quick mental math, or not really math, was, or I should say my immediate thought was, oh, yeah, I could blow it out of the water. But then I hammered down. I was like, oh, no, assuming everything goes very well with Nova Lake, that might only be like a 20% advantage or something. But that's relatively far out. Yeah, I mean, I think at this point the best we can say is they're probably going to be relatively close in performance, and based on what we have now, and based on that, meaning Intel might be 3x stronger than what we have right now, is very, very exciting for the future of APUs. And honestly, at a certain point, like it like, to go back to our initial discussion point on from the corrections, like it really does start to make dedicated graphics on laptop almost feel pointless.
Right. And I guess that's one final thing I will point out is the scratch math that I did for this video suggested that the performance could be around an RTX 5080 laptop, or was it just 5080 in general? Like, actually, I can just pull this up here. Yeah, okay, laptop. All right. But, you know, it's conceivable could get close to 5090 laptop as well. And that's why it's a range. We don't know yet for either, right? Maybe it'll be around 5080 laptop. Maybe it'll get close to 5090 laptop in performance. Nova Lake AX, that is. Same with Medusa, Halo. And I would caution when I talk about the math I just said to go, oh, Tom just confirmed one is 5% faster than the other. No, maybe there's a 10, 20% IPC increase to XE3P over XE3. Maybe RDNA 5 is 60% higher, more performance per CU. honestly, in ray tracing, it might be double the performance per CU. So, and we don't know XE3P's ray tracing performance. So there's too much there where I don't do the math and go, one's going to win, but they could be close and one or the other could win. And it's not like we're just sure AMD is going to dominate APU next year. That's exciting.
Yeah. I mean, I think the way to look at it, like, I mean, you have like this wide of like an error bar on either end for both of them right now, and they overlap a ton. So one will end up winning slightly, one will end up losing slightly, unless, something happens or XE3P doesn't scale at those higher core counts for one reason or another. But I mean, assuming all goes well with both of them, that's really exciting for laptops. And I don't know, it's almost a shame to see that Intel won't keep developing their iGPUs at that higher end, but hopefully Nvidia impresses with that.
But that's the thing, is once we have, like, I presume Intel 14A Nvidia tiles, maybe we won't care.
I mean, it doesn't. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if Titan Lake delivers great graphics performance with an Nvidia or an Intel tile.
Techno writes him, and he has a link to some patent about cores maximizing single core performance. He says, is there any update on this, presumably rentable units, or is this Intel just creating patents for the sake of creating patents? Will we see the Titan Lake in all E-core design? Well, that's, first of all, well, he says with a large amount of E-cores with 3 and 8 E-cores creating P and up. So, too soon for me to say. I mean, I might do a Titan Lake leak somewhat soon. I've kind of been moving through more close to release stuff before I get to like a big Zen 7 leak. I know you know about, Dan, and honestly, there's a ton of stuff I could probably tell you guys about Razor Lake and so on and so forth. But like, I did a 5090 Ti leak last week because maybe we talk about that before we talk about stuff coming out in 3 years. And so I'm not going to say what exact core design is whatever, except to say that Nova Lake is one of the big ones. And then Razor Lake is decent. Titan Lake's, more like a Panther Lake situation, I believe, except now with the added bonus of now NVIDIA tiles. And after that, Hammer Lake is another big uplift, So with all of that in mind, nothing I've seen in them indicates rentable units. And so at least not until Hammer Lake. And I just don't think that's a thing they're doing. I think it's very clear they dropped that idea and they're just going to go in other directions to get more performance. All right. Well, I already mentioned it, so let us move on to it with story number 2. This piece of content is brought to you by The Farmer's Dog, a fresh dog food subscription made with human-grade ingredients that's personalized to your dog's age, size, and activity level. Even a dog like Jessie, who has unlimited energy for activity. Trust me. But I do mean it. Jessie had her information entered by me on their website, then it was cultivated to her, and boom, it arrived with her name on it, and she absolutely loves it. Maybe too much, honestly. Like, seriously, she's like shaking before I feed her most of the time right now. And she never used to do that before. And she loved her dog food. The kibble I got was pretty high quality stuff, but this is clearly on another level. I mean, if you had a picky dog, I'm sure they wouldn't be picky any longer if you gave them the Farmer's Dog. And frankly, that's because I think, as far as I can tell, giving it to my dog, it seems like the most high quality and tasty dog food you can get. And it has real scientific credibility too. You see, the recipes meet AAFCO nutritional standards, and that means they are complete and balanced for dogs' needs. Meals are also developed with the help of veterinarian nutritionists or developed by on-staff board-certified nutritionists as well. And so it is thoughtfully formulated and thoughtfully partitioned for your dog. I love the setup process. It was actually fun getting it all ready for her and cultivating a feeding plan just for Jessie. She actually loves the treats they sell as well, too. And all of it is high quality, human grade and made in human food facilities with the same safety standards as human food. And so if you're interested in trying the Farmer's Dog, you can get 50% off right now if you go to the link in the description. They also give you free shipping and 24/7 customer support. And so look, you are helping the channel if you click that link alone. Jesse loves it, and I think you'll love it too. RTX 5090 Ti incoming? I don't know, but Nvidia did at least build one. First, quoting from overclocking.com regarding the initial rumors from a week ago, and then I'll move on to the write-up about the leak that I put out. So, first from overclocking.com. A very high-end RTX 50 series GPU is allegedly in the works, and its arrival is supposed to even be scheduled for back to school. The industrial process has apparently already begun, design and other aspects attached to it, and the arrival of this card would have no connection to the Super Series, though. However, does this mean that we can be certain that this card will be launched? NVIDIA has the ability to change its mind very quickly, as it has done in recent years. Do we have any concrete evidence to suggest an RTX Titan or 5090 Ti is coming? Yes. We even think that this card should be released in small batches and will even have an FE variant. Right. So this all started from a report from a French website, which, as they describe, came from multiple of their sources in various positions, discussing such a project about some Titan or 5090 Ti coming in the second half of this year. Despite this, and despite all of the coverage, we were honestly at Moore's Law said very skeptical, seeing as the super refresh was already basically delayed indefinitely. Recent 9080 XT engineering samples still have not seen the light of day, and NVIDIA has had issues supplying even their current Blackwell SKUs as is. A lot of things have been rumored that haven't come out, and this kind of just seemed like another rumor that may have been a game of telephone. At least that's what I thought at first. But after contacting our own sources, we can confirm that there are 5090 Ti samples NVIDIA is testing. In fact, it has been in testing since the first half of last year. Now, those samples from last year, we don't know if they are still like this now, had 5% more CUDA cores and performed about 10% better than the standard 5090. But they also ran between 700 to 750 watts, with unlocked prototypes guzzling beyond a kilowatt. Yes, over 1,000 watts. So yes, this would be a beast of a card, if we can even use that word anymore. It's more like a graphics brick or small microwave, since our source had to use both hands anytime they wanted to move it. That was an actual quote from the person. But again, to be clear, these are samples from a year ago. Our source believes that with faster memory and better binning, they might be able to squeeze out a 15 to 20% performance boost over the 5090. In fact, I might add that the MSI Lightning, like 1200 watt GPU that's going around right now, Lightning Z, I think it is, they squeezed 13% more performance in some games, going to like 800 watts. So I don't have any reason to doubt that actually better dies with better memory could get to 20%. But that's pretty much it. What we know is that it exists, but just like we knew that the Titan ADA that I leaked pictures of existed and never came out, and the 9080 XT exists in some labs, and yet we don't have any proof they're going to launch it. But here's the thing that became a more interesting part of the video I put out, I believe. Why are rumors about such a GPU coming out now, and why would they suggest a late 2026 launch? Especially when the next GPU generation, still according to almost all of my sources, should be ready by the end of next year. Well, we can only venture a theory, and keep in mind, this doesn't come from any sources, this part. This is not a leak. This is just me throwing out a theory. But we do know that, well, RDNA 5 will be launching in 2027. RTX 6000 might not be, according to some rumors out there. Now, I haven't been able to verify those rumors, but let's assume those aren't BS. Like, let's assume they're true. Okay, well, we know that Rubin, the AI chip next year, will use 3 nanometer. All right, would they want to pull from that from their gaming chips? I mean, already AMD with RDNA 5 is going to have to compete with PlayStation 6, Xbox Magnus, Zen 6 APUs, and Rubin for capacity. I don't know. What if this 5090 Ti is now being prepared for a release, because already the 5090 is almost double the performance of a 9070 XT. They had 20% of that. It might actually trade blows with the top RDNA 5 gaming card. It honestly might. Yes, we'll probably using double the energy, but if it allowed NVIDIA to save 3 nanometer capacity for AI GPUs and possibly push the RTX 6000 series further away, maybe it'd be worth it. And by the way, something I also ended on in that video, pushing back the series to 2028. That would be about when Intel 14A is ready. The node I believe they're using for Titan Lake's GPU tiles, suggesting they might be deciding, let's just make Blackwell the longest generation in NVIDIA gaming history. Let's get a full generational uplift, even if it's a small one, just by overclocking all of our chips and then sell those through 2027 and most of 2028, about all of 2028. And then late 28, early 29, just do an all Intel 14A launch for Intel APUs and for NVIDIA gaming cards so that we can use Intel capacity too for that and not bother pulling from AI capacity at TSMC. But that is the theory I put out. I actually think it's a pretty compelling theory.
Yeah.
But I would still say most of my sources think it's TSMC and they're going to launch it late next year. But I don't know. Things can change. NVIDIA did move Maxwell to an entirely different node. They could do it again, or I guess do the opposite of that.
Yeah, I do have to say, if it uses that much energy, though, I would be a little worried about like even their hyper advanced like cooling solutions that they've developed over the years with their Founders Edition coolers. If that would still present issues at a certain point, because like I guess 750 watts could probably be cooled, but like if it actually goes to over 1,000 watts, that's just absurd. And I don't know. Even if it ends up beating the whatever they call it, the 1080 XT or whatever the hell, or
1090 XTX,
or maybe it'll be the AI whatever next time around. I don't think it would really. I don't know if it would be worth launching it unless it like really ended up massacring the RDNA 6.
RDNA 5.
Oh, RDNA 5, yeah.
Yeah, and so let me think. What else would I say about this, really? I would suggest this when it comes to power. So, let me first just do a land acknowledgement, actually, and say that I already think the 5090 is ridiculous. And this comes as someone that still uses a 4090 and loves my 4090, one of my favorite graphics cards I've ever owned. Honest to God, it is. This 4090, it is 450 watt TDP.
Yeah, but it's like 300, right?
Yeah, I mean, and like often 200 watts in many games when the frame rate's capped. So it's like, it doesn't actually need to get to 450. I've honestly never seen it get to above 400, I don't think. It's almost never above 350. Okay, well, the problem with the 5090 is, I think it has a 575 watt TDP. All the time, go read reviews. It actually does cap at 575 and actually push out that much heat. And for that reason, I'm no interest in the 5090. Anything above that, I'm even less interested. Okay. And I have to assume, though, what NVIDIA would probably do is they'd probably try to get to somewhere where it's 10 to 15% faster in the default BIOS mode. In the default BIOS mode, technically, a single 12 VH power connector can output 600 watts. Mm-hmm. And if you add the PCIe, that's 675 watts. So that's still headroom for like another 15% wattage without needing to add another power connector. My suggestion would be that they would have a default BIOS that could make do as if it was a single connection. And then if you have a second one plugged in, or like they allow AIBs to have that, or there's a different model, I don't know, but you see what I'm saying? Like they'd probably make it so it's for like a typical power supply, but have a BIOS switch that then goes to like 800 watts. I don't think they'll go to 1,000 personally. That seems insane to me. But MSI, I will say though, this also makes me wonder if these reports are true though. MSI Lightning Z just came out the same year these rumors are happening. Maybe MSI has already given the green light to push for this insane power before the stronger model comes out. I don't know.
Wait, what does the MSI use for power connectors? Because I was about to make it
216 pins.
Okay, I was about to joke. Are we gonna get the 2 gens after the first 2 VH power or dual V8 12 VH power pit graphics card? Because that would be kind of funny. Because like the whole thing was just, and you can deliver as much wattage as you need with this one smaller connector, and we're already past it.
Yeah, I know, that is funny. I mean, I don't know, we'll see. But You agree. I feel like they would have a default BIOS that isn't certainly not above 800
Probably.
watts.
That makes sense.
And then they'd probably for reviews have a mega BIOS version so they could say, it'll be on all of the benchmarks so that when RDNA 5 launches, if it only wins by 10%, Nvidia can be like, yeah, whatever, our card's a year old and it uses an older node and DLSS is better, so who cares? Even though, again, I think the 5090 is already borderline disqualifying how much energy it uses, and certainly I think above 700 watts. I say I just don't recommend it. I mean, it's stupid.
Or they could tie this in with back to school and be like, hey, you don't need to heat your dorm anymore. This gives off all the heat you need.
I mean, this is beyond some space heaters.
Yeah.
Like we're getting like not a standard one that's like, microwave sized, but like I have little space heaters that I sometimes put next to me on the porch on a cold morning or evening when I'm having like a drink out there. And I think that each one of those pulls like 500 watts. So we're already beyond some space heaters. They're cheap little ones, but still.
Yeah.
The fact that I can even say that is insane. I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know that I have that much else to say about this. Just a lot of hunches. I showed the Charlie conspiracy meme multiple times while I was doing this, because I'm just like, Nvidia uses Intel foundries here. Rumors of delaying the chip to the same time here. 5090, are they just going to refresh 4 nanometer for 2 more years and then wait for Intel's capacity? I think it's something they would probably at least be considering. Well,
if they do, I mean, the people online are going to be jonesing for a new Nvidia graphics card if we go 3.5 years without a new release.
It's going to be like Lovelace, where it has an absurd efficiency boost because of how long they were using an incredibly inefficient for the time node. The final thing that I will, I guess, add on to this is if Nvidia does do this, I hope that AMD actually just goes for the crown hard, even if it's limited edition, even if it's hard to get, because I think Nvidia could squeeze out something that trades blows with the leaked RDNA 5 flagship that I've shown. But this is very preliminary, throwing the idea around stuff. Like I just open the document now. The top desktop gaming RDNA 5 chip was 380 watts, 154 compute units, and 384-bit. Technically, the fully enabled chip could have around 200 compute units, 512-bit. Just fucking go for it, AMD. I mean, they're not competing with something with 3 times the compute units of a 9070 XT with what memory that's 50%, almost 40. It's 40% faster. No, over 50% because it'd be 36 instead of 20 gigabit. Yeah. So like, like 80% faster memory with double the memory bus width. I'm sorry. This could be something 3-4 times faster, maybe, if they really went crazy. Don't quote me. We don't need to have those memes again. But AMD should just go for the crown if Nvidia actually tries to fight RDNA 5 with some,
Well, all bets are kind of off at this point. If they push like even an 800 watt graphics card or something with the 5090 Ti or whatever the hell they decide to call it, because that's just like AMD won't or can't receive the same level of criticism they would for just saying screw it, let's go for the maximum amount of power we can deliver to this thing, even if it, like you said, it's some special edition thing. Or hell, maybe that this would be the time for Sapphire to bring back its toxic edition again with that. But like all bets are off at that point. So yeah, just go for it as much as they want at a certain point.
Yeah, I mean, how would I put this? This would kind of be like, it's not really the same thing, but it would kind of be like if AMD was planning to have the RX 6900 XT RDNA 2 was the last time they traded blows, or arguably took the crown really against Nvidia. Like if there was a version of that had another like 20% compute units that they just never released or they weren't planning to. And then Nvidia was still using Turing and they were like, you know what we're going to do actually? We're going to push out a 2080 Ti Super that hits 2.5 gigahertz and has 24 gigs of RAM and pulls 400 watts. And this will be something that we're sure can compete with the 6800 XT. I mean, if that would have been the case, AMD should have gone for something even more. I just think this is like the RDNA 2 era, where the rumor is that AMD wasn't going to maybe launch the 80 CU model, except this time it's like they could enable something vastly even more than what it was like before. I really hope they do. But anyways, if you want to hear more about that theory and more about that, remember to go watch that video with the 5090 Ti engineering sample. And otherwise, let us move on once again to another story. This time, story number 3. Damning report from ComputerBase shows DLSS 4.5 outperforming FSR4 in gamers' eyes substantially. Quoting first from Tech Power Up here and then the write-up, ComputerBase conducted a massive online blind test, allowing thousands of gamers to vote on their preferred game video output. The options included NVIDIA's latest deep learning super sampling 4.5, AMD's FSR upscaling AI with FSR4 on a Radeon RX 9000 series GPU, and native resolution rendering without AI upscaling. Interestingly, DLSS 4.5 received the highest percentage of votes, winning in every scenario. ComputerBase tested various games like Anno 1117, Arc Raiders, Cyberpunk, Horizon Forbidden West Satisfactory, and The Last of Us Part 2. So, yep, leave it to the Germans to give us proper statistics in the place of personal sentiment. Apparently, AI frames are better than real frames. Well, as long as we are talking about upscaling, this shouldn't actually be a surprise, though. Upscaling has gotten great over time, with base DLSS 4 and even FSR 4 arguably being more than good enough, especially when most games use TAA at native, and those TAA techniques have not improved and arguably gotten worse with the reliance on upscaling right now. So, in a way, these results just confirm what we have been saying for a long time. Simple upscaling has been good enough since really FSR 3 or maybe even 2.5, and certainly since DLSS 3, especially since ComputerBase tested quality presets. The challenge now are for higher ratios of upscaling. Well, this survey already shows NVIDIA is triumphant. We have to say it is upscaling from 1080p and 720p, where DLSS has the greatest advantage over FSR 4 so far, and it also does not take into account what the frame rate is on any given graphics card. Once you take that into account, there might be an argument for FSR4 being worth using sometimes instead. But so really, to be clear, though, there are really two main takeaways. First of all, yes, NVIDIA is still ahead of AMD in upscaling image quality. However, second, really everyone should be using upscaling now. NVIDIA or not, it is that good, and FSR often beat native as well.
Yeah. I do have to say, like, just to amplify that last point you made, because you still see it online a lot in discussions of FSR DLSS, that the quote unquote purists refusing to use upscaling still, where it's like, well, hey man, a blind test showed that the majority of people prefer the majority of people prefer DLSS over even native. So this is less of a debate at a certain point about FSR versus DLSS, where like, no, straight up people prefer DLSS over native resolution a lot of the time now.
Yes, people were as likely to prefer, and again, it's not like they said it was the same. People were as likely to say they thought FSR4 looked better than native as they were to say native looked better than DLSS or FSR. And then there's another like 8% that, I'm looking at the numbers here, said they were all about the same. Putting that into perspective, if you add up the 25% that thought FSR looked the best, the 41% that thought NVIDIA looked the best, and the 8% that think they couldn't tell a difference, that leaves about a fourth of the surveyors saying native was better than, or at least the same.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, you should be upscaling. Like, at that point, I would argue half of those people just are many of those people that said whatever. Oh, let me look here and make sure I didn't get that wrong. Oh, I was looking at the Last of Us Part 2 results. Still, my point stands, though. The final results were a bit different than that. But the Last of Us Part 2, that was the shakeout, that just as many people liked even FSR as native. And so if it's implemented very well, especially, there is no point to using native anymore.
Yeah. And then I brought this up to you before, but like the one caveat I had just while looking at it, and I was just curious about more clarification's sake for just was it delivered or was each test delivered at the same frame rate? Because if like the frame rate isn't an apples to apples comparison, I would be a bit concerned that like a lot of people voting might just be voting for like the better frame rate or like a mix of things of quality. But while talking to you about it, like you brought up the point, like video delivery, they probably were all at 60 FPS, but
Yeah, exactly, because that was what was online, and it took a while to buffer the video segment, so it was very high quality.
Yeah.
So yeah, and again, just to correct myself there, just to because people will say, oh well, FSR did better in The Last of Us Part 2 than any other one. Whatever. That's the one my eyes glanced at. The final numbers were still this though. Actually, less than a fourth thought Native was the best looking. So I know, but at the same time, Nvidia 48.2% thought DLSS 4.5 looked best. Again, there's two ways to look at that. That means less than half of the people could tell the difference. Okay, that means FSR is probably close, but still, only 15% thought FSR was the best. That does tell you that at least in quality, Nvidia does still have an edge.
Yeah,
and you can't argue, they do.
Nvidia definitely offers an edge, even if like I still stand by my previous statements. Like I think FSR is worth using in most games, at least at some setting where it's offered. But yeah, I mean, I think this does show that, well, at least as far as image quality alone goes, like, yeah, it is the superior technology.
By the way, I would like them to add XE super sampling in a follow-up, and then also add one that isn't compared to the others. It's just, which ones would it be? Like native and FSR 3.1, and then like TSR or something.
Oh, okay.
Because I have to say, as someone with a Strixhaler laptop that every now and then does game on it, like when I'm on vacation or something, I still think 3.1 is good enough to use over native as well. Like it's certainly worth the performance boost that there's basically no time I don't use it. Like I think again, that's where I think we've been at for a while. Like DLSS 2.5, and then when AMD got to FSR 3.1, you should always have been using it. And we got there years ago. Now with FSR 4 and even more so DLSS 4.5, we're to the point where you're actually being stupid if you don't.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not just worth it and usually looks as good. It's actually usually looks better now.
Yeah, and just especially like, I mean, everybody makes that decision to sacrifice visual quality a little bit to get substantially better frame rates. And yeah, in a lot of games, like if it's like doubling my frame rate, even if it's a slightly worse image quality than native, I would prefer the higher frame rate most of the time.
All right. Let us now move on from the NVIDIA-centric stories to some AMD ones with story number 4. Zen 6 Medusa Point seems to be getting RDNA 4M. Quoting here from Tech Power Up, and then, of course, the write-up. Medusa Point will introduce a desktop-exclusive RDNA 4 with the new RDNA 4M variant. I guess it means laptop exclusive. Although we initially lack comparisons between the two, some instructions set extensions such as WMMA and SWMMAC instructions indicate that support in the new GFX 1170 GPU, which is the one quoted here, should be associated with the GFX 11 generation, also known as RDNA 3. Currently, this is believed to be an upgraded RDNA 3 with mini RDNA 4 modules, enabling FSR 4 support even on the less powerful Medusa Point APU versus Gorgon and Strix Point, because AMD is an idiot. Even we were not clear on what GPU architectures Medusa Point was going to get. In fact, it was arguably the biggest unknown of Moore's Law's Dead's Medusa leaks up until now, often with me just saying, I don't know. Some docs say RDNA 3.5, some docs say RDNA 4, and even some of them reference RDNA 5. Well, now we might have a clearer picture on what the heck's going on. First, what we saw in Linux driver code is that the Medusa Point GPU was called GFX 1170. This does mean it is a version of RDNA 3, as the base RDNA 3 is GFX 11. And then you add the 70 or 50 if it's RDNA 3.5. Meanwhile, RDNA 4 is GFX 12, And then they add more numbers to tell you which version.
Mhm.
Second, we see FP8 support in RDNA4 like matrix instructions in the code as well, which implies the presence of matrix accelerators or tensor cores. And of course, official FSR4 uses FP8 extensively. So compared to the slim potential of RDNA5 coming to this is disappointing in some ways, especially since Medusa Point will supposedly, as far as what we can still hear now, only get 8 compute units, which would be less than Phoenix Point, let alone Strix Point. But Medusa Point is going to be more of a mid-range CPU, really replacing Kraken more so than replacing Strix Point. You have to remember that there will also be a Medusa Halo Mini, called by some leakers apparently Medusa Premium. It will be the real mainstream APU, the real successor to Strix Point, and it will come with 24 RDNA 5 compute units, something that should make it 3 to 4 times faster than what Medusa Point will come with. But Medusa Point will usually be in cheaper laptops or paired with a dedicated graphics card. And so this having a smaller GPU that still uses RDNA 3 as its base, it can arguably still work, even if it lacks the ray tracing improvements of RDNA 4. Just the presence of having tensor cores and thus FSR4 official capabilities will perhaps make it a decent performer in the low end. Affordable premium space, as AMD will probably call it, because everything's premium these days, apparently. In fact, if slower RAM is used, it might match many Strix Point systems, despite having less compute units. This is something that we saw Kraken regularly do lately against Hotpoint and Phoenix. So it still is probably going to end up being an upgrade in sub $1,000 laptops, is what I would convey in graphics performance, most likely, because it will replace Kraken. But also, if you have a cheaper mini PC that just comes with, not necessarily cheaper, but a mini PC that comes with DDR5, non-LP DDR5X, in other words, probably DDR5 like 4800, 5600. Well, I could honestly see this performing as well as Strix Point, which really needs a ton of bandwidth to ever come close to some of the faster APUs out there. I think this makes a lot more sense. If they literally just went with RDNA 3.5 again, I was going to like scream. I still wish it was just RDNA 5 though.
RDNA 5, obviously, like I with APUs being so important for laptops for AMD, it's becoming more and more questionable to me why their graphics architectures aren't more debuting on their APUs or coming out at close to parity on their with dedicated graphics, because like that's a huge part of their market, and them always being, I don't know, a year to a year and a half behind with their architectures on their APUs compared to their dedicated graphics is just a huge miss to me.
Yeah, it's so weird. And in fact, it's funny. I was talking to, let's say this too first. We'll need to see how this performs before we know. Like, maybe it is something that will end up being just as strong as Strix Point, but it'll have half the compute units, consume half the energy, be excellent in cheaper handhelds. Like, maybe it turns out that it's like, it is just RDNA 4 performance, but the ray tracing's 10% worse, but the efficiency is better. Like, maybe it will look like a good trade-off. But assuming it doesn't come out perfect in that, like in one of those Goldilocks scenarios where we're like, oh, it did make sense. Karino Sugata, suggested to me offline today, like, it just seems like AMD might be doing too much hyper optimizing for some of their designs. Like, it's this weird thing of like, really, the 6500 XT gets 4 PCIe lanes, right? Wasn't it? Like, what did you really save in space and energy? Like 5%, 1% less silicon? Like, really, we're going to RDNA 3.7 instead of 4 or 5? Maybe it will save 5% die space for something that's 5% more efficient, but is that even worth it to have people working on another architecture's drivers for years? Like, why not just make everything have RDNA 5, especially when that's what the next gen consoles will have, as we'll confirm again in the next story, by the way. I mean, it's like you really want all of these architectures floating around. Why? Just go 3, then 4, then 5. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to play devil's advocate to that a little bit, like, if this is going to mostly be paired with dedicated graphics or just notebooks. Go in very cheap notebooks or netbooks, I guess I can see that trade-off and them just saying like, hey, this iGPU isn't really meant for gaming, and this saves us however much on energy. That might be worth the trade-off, I suppose, because I mean, I know you can play games on it, and it might end up even beating Strick's point, but like, I don't think people are buying an 8 compute unit APU laptop with the intent of gaming being like their primary use case for it.
Sure. And so I don't know, would you agree? Like I haven't actually looked at like the comments out there, the discussions around this at all. But I'd suggest that a lot of people seem to have seen this and gone, this is stupid. For me, this actually was good news, because if I saw RDNA 3.5 again, I was going to scream. It at least eliminates the worst case scenario. And I had a lot of people telling me it was going to use 3.5. So
yeah, I mean, I suppose like, I mean, RDNA 3.5, this would just, I guess I would have similar feelings to what I already said, except a lot more negative, and I wouldn't have bothered to do the devil's advocate thing at all. Like, because that would just be stupid. But so I
was really worried they're going to go maximum stupid, to be honest. I mean, look at what they're doing with Redstone.
Yeah, I don't know if this comes off as good news to me in light of that. Like 3.5 would have been like, AMD, what the hell? This is, I don't know, slightly below neutral, I guess, to me.
Yeah. It removes the worst case scenario.
Sure.
Mr. Tiger writes in and says, do you think Medusa Halo laptops will make Thunderbolt 5 or its equivalent USB 4 V2 a standard for their USB-C ports? When Strix's Halo launched in 2025, they didn't even include it on their premium devices. He's sarcastic when he said premium. I don't want to go the Frankenstein route again. So I actually checked my old Medusa Point dock I had. And Gerard, you can put that on screen now. Yeah, at least as of when I leaked this a year ago in a big Zen 6 leak, you can clearly see it says USB 4 V2. So at least Medusa Point, as of a year ago, will have this. And I just remind people when you ask me questions like this, and I you know, with peace and love, I don't mean this in a mean way, but give me extra clicks if you forgot if these things will have it. Go watch that old video. Yeah. You know. All right. Let us now move on to a story that shouldn't have existed and came absolutely out of nowhere. Story number 5. This piece of content is brought to you by Wondershare Recover It V14. Even if you back up your files regularly, like I do, to an external drive, your data isn't always necessarily 100% safe. Backup does not automatically mean recovery. Yes, it feels secure to duplicate your files, but something can still go wrong. And that's what most people don't realize, that external backups fail quite often from a whole host of events outside of your main device that you probably aren't putting somewhere else where things can go wrong. They can be dropped, broken mounting connections, depending on how things are stored or connected. File systems can get corrupted, or even just specific files, not the drive itself, becomes unreadable. But that still sucks if that was the file you actually wanted to access. And this is where data recovery tools come in. You see, tools like Wondershare Recover It V14 are not just there to replace backups, but to handle situations where the backup itself didn't cover what went wrong. Recover It V14 offers AI smart file recommendations. AI highlights lost photos and videos first, so you don't need to search manually and remember what might be wrong. AI bad sector detection and risk alert also detects drive issues before recovery, avoiding blind attempts, and it supports multiple data loss scenarios and devices. It is simple to use and beginner friendly for a recovery process app. And so, no, it can't magically fix everything, but it can fix far more dead files than you'd think. And without a recovery option, there wouldn't be any chance of recovering something in the event something you didn't plan for goes wrong. And eventually, something you didn't plan for does always happen to all of us. So backup is important, but recovery is what you hope you never need, but you should always be prepared to use and have ready. And so if you want to make sure you are thoroughly protected, check out the link below to get a free trial of Wondershare Recover It V14. Checking out the trial yourself costs you nothing, but it does help the channel a ton when you download and try out that free trial. So please do so to support Moore's Law is Dead by starting your free trial of Wondershare Recover It V14 today. PS6 will have RDNA 5, despite the fake news being spread last week. So first, I'll quote Insider Gaming, who shamelessly started all of this confusion last week, and then I'll get to a rather lengthy explanation to clear things up. So anyways, from Insider Gaming, new information concerning the internal hardware expectations of the next Sony PlayStation is surfaced. Do not expect the next Sony PlayStation to use AMD's RDNA 5 GPU. So let's just say I've seen some people arguing about if they did or didn't say things. This article literally says word for word, PlayStation 5 won't use RDNA 5. Don't tell me that's not what you said. During a recent discussion on NeoGAF forums, they always know everything there, reliable tech leaker Kepler L2 noted that the PS5's internals are a hybrid of RDNA 1 and ray tracing, and that the PS6 isn't full RDNA 5 either. And that is where tons of confusion was caused, to the point that eventually Kepler seemingly walked back some of his statements upon seeing a ton of people quote him saying the PS6 didn't have RDNA 5, as that is what most websites quoted him as saying, or at least portrayed. Especially after I responded with fire and brimstone, insisting that Sony will announce that it does not have RDNA 5. And I showed proof of that in a document from a PlayStation 6 doc that shows RDNA 5 specifically called out, and that I warned that anyone attached to this fake news is going to look incredibly stupid when Mark Cerny walks on stage and says RDNA 5, and everyone won't remember what you meant by that. What they're going to remember is that you said it has RDNA 1, actually, because that's what I saw people saying. By the way, does anyone... Well, anyway, let me continue. However, we must be clear about something. In our view, Kepler has not walked this back enough. The fact of the matter is that there is no such thing as full RDNA 5. If only microarchitectures were so clear-cut. Just to show how difficult this would be to try to argue that, let's take Vega, for example. Now, is Vega in its APU forms truly Vega? After all, it leaks some key architecture features that the desktop models have, like high bandwidth cache controllers. Perhaps even Vega 3 is not really Vega. And what about the PS4 Pro? That was seemingly Polaris, but it had many Vega features. Let's not even start with Kaby Lake G. It's pointless to argue where one architecture begins and another one ends. In fact, just to take Kepler's example, the PS5 does have some features and optimization RDNA 2 on desktop does not have. So which one is not the full RDNA 2? The PS5 or the 6900 XT? Or is it the Xbox Series X? Is that the only one that's full? Because I believe there are some custom compute editions added to the Xbox Series X.
Watch the Mark Cerny Power Hour where he talks about the customizations to the PS5, like
especially the PS5 Pro.
Where they took some stuff out, put some stuff in. Like he talks about that in the Power Hour.
Exactly. And this is overall, therefore, a very pointless exercise. In broad strokes, which is the only thing you can ever paint with these sort of semi-custom products, PS5, Xbox Series X, they're closer to the PC RDNA 2 than anything else, and so they are called RDNA 2. And PS6 will be closer to RDNA 5 than to anything else, and so it will be called RDNA 5, and actually calling it, that is what matters. It is RDNA 5, even if Tom Henderson wants to write an article that makes readers think it's RDNA 1 and argue in the comments, because that is what they call it. AMD calls it RDNA 5, and Sony will when they announce it. And the truth is that is because consoles are specialized devices. They are semi-custom. It is normal for them not to map cleanly onto PC GPU architectures. However, AMD will call PS6 RDNA 5, and that should be all there is to say about it. Now, before we go to your thoughts, Dan, I also, because most of that was Carbon Cry's write-up, I also want to read points 1, 4, and 5 from a tweet that I put out, because I put out some angry tweets like, no, guys, PS6 has RDNA 5. What the hell are you talking about, basically? And this is fake news from fake leakers. And there are people that got mad at that. Honestly, the ratios were pretty bad for you, Tom Henderson. I'm just going to say it here. But I want to make some more things clear, because I really want to nip this, because I think I actually have perfect examples of why this full RDNA thing is nonsense. So let me just skip to that part then, which is 4 and 5. Point 4 I made in this article-long tweet I put out. People at AMD think arguments over architecture fullness are absurdly stupid. I've been told that. I've been told multiple times by people at AMD, the is wrong with everyone saying which architecture is more full? That's not how we think about it here at AMD. There is no exact architecture that is the same either. For example, the 6 nanometer RX 7600 XT has fundamental differences to both the 5 nanometer 7900 XTX and the 4 nanometer Phoenix APU. Yet all three are called RDNA 3. And I'll admit that I myself have been stupid about this sort of thing when I argued with people about the PS5. And I made mistakes and regret it. But I regret those mistakes. And these mistakes should not be made by other people in the future moving forward. I mean, God, people said RDNA, they said PS5 used RDNA 1. And how did that work out when it outperformed Series X? Complete nonsense. And just to put a final nail in this coffin of stupidity, the variant of Zen 2 in the PS5, as analyzed by Chips and Cheese, literally has full features stripped out, and yet it was assessed to have no performance loss to the desktop Zen 2. So here we have examples of 3 different nodes and architectures with different cache sizes and ray tracing features between the 7600 XT, 7900 XTX, and Phoenix, and yet they're all RDNA 3. Yet here's an example of with the PS5 literally stripping out features for its CPU and not losing any performance. So all of this is nonsense. It's all nonsense. There's no full RDNA 5. There are just different versions of RDNA 5 that are custom tailored to exact products. And this isn't even limited to consoles. Like I said, 7600 XT, 7900 XTX. There are fundamental differences between them, but they're still RDNA 3.
Is the 6800 XT full RDNA 2, Tom? That's the real question.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's just the dumbest thing. And in Rembrandt, that APU doesn't even have infinity cache. Is it not full RDNA 2?
Yeah, like
what are we talking about?
At a certain point, like what I mean, when you put something in like a distinct category of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, like you're putting something in like, I don't know, like a quantized box that you see like, despite the fact that you're actually looking at the evolution of a continuous architecture from wherever, like, I don't know, even Vega all the way to RDNA was, or RDNA 5 is right now, or in the future. Like, so at a certain point, like you just draw a box, you have to draw a box around it to some extent. And some of those semi-custom silicon is going to have features that are in RDNA 5 desktop and that isn't in RDNA 5 desktop. Like that's just, or is removed from RDNA 5 desktop, I should say. And like, I don't know. It's like the same thing. It's interesting to see the parallel I've seen with like evolution, because people talk about the common question online you'll see is like, well, when does one species become another? And the answer is it doesn't really.
Yeah.
Archaeologists or biologists, whoever's doing the research, just drew a box around it at some point. We were like, humans start at 300,000 years from years ago, because that's when we decided anatomically modern humans existed. Like at a certain point, like you're really it becomes like semantic pedantry, like to try to win some stupid internet argument when in
which
reality,
is what all this was going to lead to, which is what made me so pissed off. I was like, really? People said there were bogus rumors that the PS5 was RDNA 1.5 and then it outperformed Series X with less compute units. How did that age, idiots who said that? You're really doing this again?
And then in the lead up to, I remember back in 2020, the lead up to the Series X and PS5 launch, it was like always this dumbass discussion that like turned into, well, the PS5 is RDNA 1.5, but I hear the Series X is actually maybe, RDNA 1.75, maybe it's even 2.25 or something. Yeah, it becomes like this stupid game of assigning decimal points to nothing at a certain point, right? Like,
well, and
like,
you know,
like I mean, I guess like in their APUs they can call it RDNA 3.5, but at the end of the day, like those to some extent are just terms that they're applying to any technology that or any chip that they're putting out.
Yeah, and you know, I even made some mistakes where when I was talking to developers before the Series X and the PS5 launched, I put out a video where honestly, it was a mistake. It was like, I didn't know how else to portray it quickly in a thumbnail. So I put like RDNA 3 or 3.5 next to it just to convey the performance developers were seeing. And I explained in the video, that's not really what it means. It doesn't matter. That was still stupid of me to do that. But But that was because there was this simplistic way of thinking when I started the channel of like, well, if it's better per compute unit, it must be because point whatever. And in reality, what we found, I don't know what it is. I don't know if there is something that AMD learned developing the PS5 that influenced RDNA 3's design. And that's why developers often told me PS5 handles geometry much better than the Xbox. Maybe there's just some magic ratio of TMUs there or something. I haven't looked at it recently. Like that just an ROPs per compute unit that is a better balance than what Xbox did. That does seem to actually be the case for sure. And that influenced how they balanced future architectures from Radeon. You know, do you really call that RDNA 3 or 3.5, 2.5? That's how I thought about it at the time.
Sure.
The answer is no, that's not how you think about it. Mark Cerny came in and he goes, we want this many ROPs and this many TMUs based on this simulated performance. And it's RDNA 2. And there may be some aspects of it that almost look GCN like, so that it's backwards compatible with like, you know, the PS4. But that doesn't mean it's GCN. There might just be a doesn't matter thing that they just keep baked in that doesn't influence the performance really at all, that they don't change. And then it's like, oh, well, that means it's really RDNA 1. It's like, well, that's not how it performed. It performed like the best RDNA 2 products that would have that many compute units anyways. And let me tell you, that is going on with the PS5. I mean, you know, Sony's very litigious, so I haven't shared that much from my PS6 documentation.
Wait, how do you know?
Yeah, I don't know. Check the picture that is the background for my Twitter profile, and you'll see what I mean. But I have to say that there are some documents I have of the PS6 where they're like literally simulating PlayStation 6 specs that are like, here's a 160-bit memory controller, here's a 192-bit, a 256-bit, here's this much cache included on it, and they're like this, and from what I saw, they found that like 160-bit with like not honestly that much cache was the sweet spot, like where there was like vast diminishing returns when it got higher up there, which I think explains why. I don't remember what it was, but like the flagship over 150 compute unit RDNA 5 desktop chip may only have like what 40 to 64 megabytes of cache, even though, you know, like, so like not even an increase over RDNA 4. But what I've seen in the PlayStation 6 simulations, RDNA 5's cache works really well per megabyte. Like you don't like, and so maybe that's what they found. But does that not make it full RDNA 5 in this example because they just decided to use less L2 cache than an equivalent desktop card? I don't know. We'll have to see the games, but it's not going to be some situation where they're like, we don't need the newest features. It's going to be a situation where they're like, these games will not use this. Let's make it smaller, but it might use this. Let's add this. Again, the PS5 Pro has more AI performance than equivalent RDNA 3 stuff. It is a custom architecture. They add and take things as they want. And so you can't really say which one's full. And I think I want to say again, like, I was thinking of this. I really wanted to make sure I said this in this episode. I think just the last news episode or something, Dan, didn't me and you mention Tom Henderson? It was recent. We're like, oh, well, if he said it, it's probably accurate. What the hell is this WCCF Tech style wipe my ass with it reporting, Tom? What is this? Because you have a pretty good name for yourself. And already here with this article, people are going to say you said it had RDNA 1 when they announced PS6. And I've made these mistakes many times. So I'm someone that doesn't say I'm perfect, but like, what are you doing? And all the comments were a cesspool. And you knew they would be, Tom. You knew what you were doing. And this is really weird to report on NeoGAF conversations, let alone NeoGAF conversations where Kepler starts trying to walk it back after seeing the shit show. And I don't see any updates to this as of this recording. I don't see any updates, you know.
And I feel like this is, maybe I'm misremembering who it was, but I feel like this has happened with Kepler in the past where stuff he says on a forum, like kind of offhanded, gets repeated as a leak when it's not really a leak, or he just gets misquoted on something. I don't know. I feel like this has happened with Kepler specifically in the past, and it's just like I don't know. If you're going to like quote Kepler about on a story, you know, maybe just correctly.
I would only quote it if he tweets it personally.
Or if you're going to like correctly attribute the or say what he said with the correct context to how he said it, like, because he doesn't only put out leaks or on Twitter. Like he says things, he speculates, and like that's not a criticism of Kepler either. Like you can speculate if you want to. It's just if you're going to talk about it, make sure that's the context in which you're talking about it.
Yeah, I will say here, there seems to be a bit of trying to have their cake and eat it too, though, on this one. You can't be regarded as a good leaker and then let this nonsense spread about stuff you say and then pretend it's not going to happen when you do it in a certain way.
Sure.
I mean, and I'm sorry, when they announced the PS6 and RDNA 5, people are going to go, Kepler, you said it'd have 96 compute units. It doesn't. Kepler, you said it'd have RDNA 1. It doesn't. Why do I have to be the one to point out to correct the record? And then he starts walking things back. Like, I'm sorry. Fair. These people like have agency. They're not children. These things didn't happen to them. They said them. And at a certain point, these people, Kepler, Tom, take responsibility for this horseshit. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
This is horseshit. This is wrong. Now people will say you said it at RDNA 1, unless you more forcefully come out and say the opposite. Right. And again, I want to be clear. It's still not walked back enough. You can't say it's still basically RDNA 5, or I didn't say it wasn't. There's tons of people on Twitter pointing out, you said dozens of times it doesn't in this conversation, and now you're saying it once, and that counts more than the 12 things you said, then go delete your old comments. And also, that's still not correct because there's no such thing as full RDNA 5.
Yeah. I mean, that's a fair point.
Mr. Tiger writes in and says, I think the next AMD architecture coming to PS6 and handheld and Xbox and PC and laptop, everything minus smart fridges, will cause the AMD laptop market share problem to get worse, not better. You are telling me AMD has the allocation from TSMC and other partners ready to supply all of these things at the same time? This seems like AMD trying to enter the big leagues, but if any of these launches become paper launches, I think their image will be done. Yeah, right. Just like Nvidia's done because of their paper launches with the 5090, man. Yeah, I don't know that I would conclude that, first of all. Nvidia seems to get away with it. Second of all, let's wait for these things to launch before we say what's screwed. And this is something I said recently, too, about, I think, the next gen Xbox and PlayStation. When someone's like, if it doesn't do this, it's screwed. It's like, let's wait for them to announce these things before we're sure they're screwed.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird comment to me because, like, this isn't a new thing for AMD to be putting out products in all of those sectors. Like they've been putting out consoles for what? I mean, decades.
Well, you would say there was what? Like Renoir was on 7 nanometer, PS5, Xbox 7 nanometer, and RDNA 1 7 nanometer, and then 2. Like they did this before, and now they bought more capacity.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's my main point. Like I mean, if they stretch themselves too thin, I guess they do. But like, I don't see them competing in that many different sectors. Is like, is notably different versus how they've competed before. And like, I guess you can say in the past, especially in laptop, they've spread themselves, or maybe they didn't have enough allocation to break into laptop that much. But, that's also in the past a bit more of a conservative approach to breaking into the laptop market, which maybe makes sense rather than producing a ton of chips that don't get sold because there's not the interest to buy them yet.
And let me say this as well. Like, it's funny. At first, I think I agreed with Mr. Tiger a little more than after you just said what you said, because once you say that, Dan, it's like you can look at this from the point of view that I kind of was, which is look at all these 2 nanometer things and 3 nanometer things they're trying to launch at the same time. But then you can also look at this from the perspective of, is this actually worse than before? Because I would say before was 2020. And in 2020, what did they have? All 7. Yeah, they had Zen 3, 7 nanometer. APUs, 7 nanometer, and then I guess IO dies were still like 14 or 12 nanometer at the time. But then the consoles, all of them were 7 nanometer. Mm-hmm. Okay, so moving forward, what are we going to have? Well, actually, their server chips are going to use 2 nanometer for the chiplets, and they're going to use 3 nanometer for the PlayStation and the Xbox, and they're going to use 3 nanometer for RDNA 5. And they will use 4 and 6 nanometer for some IO dies, depending on which ones they decide to go with for which product. Before, it was mostly 7 nanometer for everything last gen. And then there was some 14 sprinkled in. Now it's 2, 3, and 4 with some 6 sprinkled in. I would say they are more diversified for capacity.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
The biggest concern, though, would be just how popular some of these could be. And it's still and the fact that now we have an AI boom competing with them. But before we had a shortage for other stuff as well. So, yeah, you've kind of convinced me, actually, Dan, that like not only is it just let's see what happens before we say it, but maybe the argument should be, is this any worse than before? And if it's not, well, AMD certainly didn't go out of business before. So it shouldn't be worse than before.
Yeah, they're going to go out of business because people are too interested in buying their things.
Yeah, like the only thing that we have to worry about is AI, but they bought all of this capacity years ago, actually. So what you more should worry about with AMD is what happens with Zen 7 capacity if the AI thing is still going on and AMD didn't pre-buy the TSMC A14 node.
Yeah.
That's what you should worry about because they've already bought all this capacity they're going to use. All right. Let us continue the PlayStation discussion here with something that's probably going to make me even more mad than the previous story.
I thought you'd be happy about this.
With story number 6, Sony closes Bluepoint Games. Quoting from Polygon before a pretty lengthy write-up here. Sony is shutting down Bluepoint Games, the developer behind 2018's Shadow of the Colossus remake and the PlayStation 5 launch game Demon's Souls, and the latest blow to its roster of PlayStation studios. Bluepoint's unannounced original project was reportedly a live service-based game on the God of War franchise, part of Sony's once enthusiastic and since reconsidered in recent interviews plan to flood the market with more live service multiplayer games. They don't want to do that as much anymore, and Bluepoint's God of War game was then scrapped, and subsequent pitches weren't greenlit by Sony. Then they didn't have a project to work on, and this led to the developer's closure. Yep, what the First, let's be clear about something. Even given the ballooning development costs and the growing importance of remakes and remasters, Bluepoint's success in those fields, it seems strange to close the studio. They were so good at a thing that's becoming more important to these types of companies, especially with their porting experience and Sony's push to port their exclusives to PC after some delay. However, I guess we must also explain, even if we don't agree with the decision, that alongside Nixxes, another remake studio that Sony owns, and Virtuos, Bluepoint was one of the most well-known remake studios, but Sony does still have Nixxes, and Bluepoint was probably in the process of being reimagined as a fully fledged, real, full RDNA 5 game developer as part of Sony's failed live service strategy. So that is probably why it was Bluepoint that got closed. At the same time, remakes and ports are also likely getting easier too. While NVIDIA's RTX Remix is really more a modding tool, it does show the path we're going down and how ray tracing and AI might be able to be used to remake a game much more quickly than ever before, especially the way Remix works, where you just plug it into the graphics pipeline and you're done. That's incredible. It means remake devs don't even have to touch the game logic, the scripting, or even the original engine. We saw that with Oblivion Remaster, which keeps game brio for the game itself while using Unreal Engine 5 just for the graphics. All of this means that Sony might be betting on AI remastering along with new other tools that will make these projects significantly easier and cheaper than the method that Bluepoint would have used to make the acclaimed Demon's Souls 2. And Bluepoint working on their own live service game was just the obvious candidate for the axe. Let's hope that Nixxes pulls through, though. And these utility studios might not be very sexy, but they can be very useful nonetheless. On a final note, it almost to me, Dan, I wrote this at the end after a Carbon Cries write-up, seems like Bluepoint was a victim of their own success. The Demon's Souls remake was so good that some people almost saw it as a sequel. Speaking for myself, I often would accidentally say to you, do you want to play Demon's Souls 2 tonight? Because I thought of it as a sequel to Demon's Souls because of just how much better the experience was. As such, if you think about it, they did so well making these that they became poised to become upgraded from a remake studio to a real studio. And then the thing they were going to work on got axed because Herman Hulst decided he was wrong to work on these things and make them do it. But that still has nothing to do with them. F*** you, Herman Hulst.
Yeah, at a certain point, like, and we'll get into the other company and the next story, but like, I really don't understand what Sony and Microsoft are doing with their studios at a certain point. Like, but like just to focus on Sony right now,
Sure.
like Sony has really, in a lot of ways, just failed first party this generation almost entirely. Like there aren't
We can say
enough,
that with this for sure.
there aren't enough first party games right now. They decided to do this dumbass live action expansion. Like I don't remember the number of games, but it was like like a dozen or not live action, live service games or something that they wanted to be in development. A bunch of them got axed. I mean, Factions got axed, which was supposed to be a live service game.
Which is the only one that definitely shouldn't have been, by the way.
Yeah,
I don't care what state it was in.
And I would bet money that game would have been good. And maybe this God of War live service game would have been good too for some people. I don't know why the hell I would want a live service God of War game, but I mean, I don't know. I guess I love The Last of Us Factions, which was a single player game with
a surprise add-on,
quote
that we
unquote,
loved
tacked on
for multiplayer. Yeah.
So maybe there's a way to make that game awesome. I don't know. But then there's also the fact that like Sony acquired Bungie, which Bungie is, I mean, one of the most storied live service game developers in history. Like first they start off with Halo, which I know isn't a live service game, but like you can see it. I think you can see the lineage from their two live service games. And then they have Destiny, and Destiny 2, which are two of the most successful live service games of all time, behind like Fortnite and I guess GTA Online at this point. Like it's up there. I don't know why like Bungie isn't just their live service studio. I mean, I guess they are because they're going to be putting out a game soon that presumably will follow that model, but I don't know why you're having all these studios develop these live service games to cancel all of them and then blame them because you lost interest in the strategy. And then Media Molecule is still allowed to exist without making a game, unless you call
Thank you
Dreams,
for bringing that up.
unless you called Dreams a game
I don't
for
even
13
think you can
years.
play it anymore.
Yeah, so I don't know. Media Molecule made Tearaway in 2013, and that's the last time they made a thing, but they still exist for some reason. But Bluepoint makes an incredibly successful launch game for the PS5. In Demon's Souls, they make some of the most critically acclaimed remakes of all time. Sony buys them to do literally nothing with them for 6 years now, I guess. Good job there. I'm glad.
For who? Bungie?
Bluepoint.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad Bluepoint is just gone for no reason. I was a bit excited about that acquisition whenever it happened, like 4 years ago or something like that, 4 or 5 years ago.
They bought them because Demon's Souls was so good, and what a waste of money. It doesn't matter how you dice it. This is mismanagement.
Yeah, all I can hope is that the dev team gets some new job elsewhere. I don't know. Like this is what a massive mismanagement of a studio. Like I just don't get what the hell happened here.
You know, it's funny too, because I remember I love the Killzone series, and Herman Hulst is the one who made 2 and 3 to a much lesser extent, but still there. Shadowfall, such big, at least well-recognized PlayStation IPs. I always found Herman Hulst very charming. And I have to say at this point, though, why is this guy still in charge?
Yeah, this is...
What is this?
Yeah, this is horseshit.
Like this is mismanagement. He should not be in charge of this anymore. Like I'm sorry, like Concord and this, and also what was it? Who made Days Gone?
Oh, why can't I? Oh, Bend.
Yeah, Sony Bend, an excellent studio. Putting all this together with so much, like, think of how successful PlayStation 5 would have been if Bend was allowed to make Days Gone 2 and it got the Assassin's Creed 2 treatment. If, I'm sorry, Bluepoint was allowed to, what I thought they were going to do, make either a MGS1 remake or a Demon's Souls 2. Think of the other direction this could have gone in, where we would have gotten Days Gone 2 in 2021, perhaps, or something. Demon Souls 2 in 2025. And like this PlayStation 5 has exclusives. They do come every year. But what if there was like that one extra one every year because he didn't do this mismanagement for live service games? Like, I think that people wouldn't be complaining. I think that Sony wouldn't just be doing well with PlayStation. I think it would be exploding with revenue. And on top of that, in response, he's like punished people who didn't do anything wrong, making their next generation weaker. This guy needs to, I'm sorry, like, I think he should go. I mean, we're going to get to the next story. If you're going to fire Phil Spencer, what the fuck is this with Herman Holst? Just because you're in charge of the team that's winning doesn't mean that you're managing it well. Like, and you seem to be mismanaging this every bit as much as Phil Spencer mismanaged Xbox, if not more. Honestly, if not more.
Yeah, I really don't get this like big push. I mean, and we criticized it years ago, like when they announced it, that big push into live service where they were like, I don't know, I guess flood the market with them and hope one of them succeeds. I mean, if that's going to be your strategy, I feel like punishing devs for making games that like aren't part of their repertoire to make those games because like you're mad that you missed the boat on Fortnite is just like I mean, that's on you that Bluepoint didn't make a satisfactory live service God of War game. Like I like there was that joke about from South Park, the Family Guy episode of South Park, that it's South Park is written by manatees, and it's like you to me you just conceptualized a video game by having manatees move random blocks around, because what is that assemblage of things?
No, you're right, because it's like God of War live service. It's like you're just
Bluepoint
doing limericks.
Why is Bluepoint doing this?
Why would Bluepoint be the one to do it?
I mean, no sense.
Yeah, and so I'm sorry. One of my main conclusions to this is I don't know why Herman Hulst still has his job, because he has royally mismanaged PlayStation. And just because PlayStation is crushing Xbox doesn't mean that everyone at PlayStation is doing a good job. And like, it's just ridiculous.
Or maybe we need to reframe it. PlayStation isn't crushing Xbox necessarily. PlayStation made a successful console, still a good console, and Microsoft is out there with Xbox crushing itself. Like that's in reality what's happening.
Who can mismanage the most, and Microsoft's one in spades.
Because at least Sony, I don't know, have a somewhat competent brand, and the console like works, and there's still some interest in your first party, or there's still a lot of interest in your first parties, despite the fact that you are trying your hardest to make all of them make nothing, it seems.
Yeah. And so I'm trying to think, the only other thing I would add on to this is this does further suggest that my theory, I think that they want more, instead of adding PS3 backwards compatibility, their big push with one of their big features of PS6 is going to be the fact that they will have streamlined AI assisted ray tracing remasters of PS3 games, the last ones they haven't done yet. Mm-hmm. This adds further evidence to, I think, that they are going to do like an RTX remix sort of thing. I'll have to dig up like the thumbnail that summarizes it. But this is something I've been thinking the whole time, is this is the direction they'll go. So I think I'm probably going to end up being right about that. Having said that, that doesn't mean you had to fire Bluepoint. You could still have Bluepoint in charge of that. Or, again, let him make Demon Souls 2 or 1.5. Speaking of 1.5s, make a Demon Souls 1.5.
Or like you bought this legendary remake studio and you bought a porting studio, presumably so they could keep doing their thing. Did like they just forget about that? I don't know. It's just so stupid. But I don't know. I hope, I guess, the effort to bring things from the PS3 into the modern world work out, I suppose.
Yeah. I'm just now remembering the video would just be my PlayStation 6 Orion leak. That, I think, a significant portion of that video, I basically explained that with the. Yeah. So if you want to see that explanation of what they're going to do, probably it was that video. Tired of getting hit in the face by unfair prices for Microsoft software? Well, you don't need to deal with that anymore. Start off 2026 right by going to cdkeyoffer.com. That's right, this piece of content is once again sponsored by a sponsor that has been a supporter of Moore's Law is Dead for almost the entire channel's life, cdkeyoffer.com. And I've been partnering with them for this long because they just give gamers something that I think they need to have. Fair pricing on Microsoft Windows and Office products. And in fact, if you go down to the description, you can click on the links there to support the channel by checking out their products, but then also support the channel further if you use offer code BROKENSILICON to save yourself an additional 25% on all Microsoft software. And there's also Die Shrink to save 3% off everything else on the website. Once again, I'm very happy to be working with cdkeyoffer.com another year of this channel's life, and I hope you'll show support to a company that supports this channel, cdkeyoffer.com. Glenn writes in, let's assume PSSR 2 arrives in March, and then it's as good as your sources suggest. Sorry, my voice cracked there. That sounded funny. At least to me it did. I'm interested in your thoughts on when we might start to see games benefiting from the improved technologies. Perhaps it could be soon. Some developers might have access to it already. Well, yeah, they definitely do for patching. Or PSSR 2 might be sufficiently similar to FSR 4 that due to familiarity with FSR 4, developers will find it straightforward to create new and improved PS5 Pro ports. Cheers. Yeah, I'm not going to comment on that. So what I would say is, and this is something I covered in my PSSR 2 leaks that I seem to almost exclusively put out in Broken Silicons for some reason. I guess that's because I don't think that's a 20-minute video, but it is a 10-minute conversation for us to have. So I tend to save minor PlayStation 6 and PSSR 2 leaks for Broken Silicon. So I don't remember which one it was that I said that, but I made it pretty clear there that developers have told me that they have to like rewrite the code, and that I believe PSSR 1 to PSSR 2 is kind of going to be analogous to like FSR 2 or 3 to FSR 4 or 5, right? This is like going from, PSSR 2 was kind of competitive with DLSS 2, they said, but obviously DLSS 3.5 and 4 destroy it. It's kind of like that. It's kind of, that's how I put it. It's going to be like going from DLSS 2.5 to 4.5, although it's probably better to use an FSR example because AMD had to kind of redo FSR support when they moved on from beyond 2. Mm-hmm. So this is going to be quite an uplift that is not just checking a box. Like they're going to have to go in and patch the game and test it. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be a lot better, but I mean, yeah. So I guess if your real question, Glenn, which I'm assuming the real question is, when will we get it? I can't promise you that. I mean, all I can tell you is that there's a ton of work behind it, and that they said early this year, didn't they? So I would assume it's coming before, which apparently according to Valve, early means June.
Early is whenever.
So it's by the end of June. That's all I can tell you. But I would honestly expect to see it in the something about it in the next 2 months. I would expect it. I can't promise you it though.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe at their next state of play.
Oh, the state of plays. The last one actually had some interesting stuff in it.
Yeah, the last state of play. On a more positive note, the last state of play was pretty good.
All right. Let us now move on. Let me see here. We are on, right, Xbox. Story number 7. Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond depart Xbox after devs warn of start to worry about a rug pull. Quoting first from PC Gamer before going to the write-up. After nearly 40 years at the company, Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer is retiring. Unexpectedly, Xbox president and heir apparent, this is the part that really surprised me, Sarah Bond, who joined the Xbox division in 2017, is not part of that plan, though. Bond has instead resigned from Microsoft outright. Spencer's position at Microsoft Gaming CEO will be taken over by Asha Sharma, who joined Microsoft in 2024 as president of its Core AI project. Prior to that, Sharma served as chief operating officer at Instacart and vice president of products and engineering at Meta. Sounds like a real gamer to me, damn. Anyways, though, it does seem like Microsoft is also betting on AI for their gaming division. Phil Spencer's retirement isn't surprising, but it genuinely is surprising that Bond is leaving. too, and to outright resign from the company on her own accord. One has to wonder if the rumors of her actually being one of the people fighting for Xbox's future were true, and she lost. Instead, Xbox will be run by a now former Core AI head. Core AI is responsible for Microsoft's base AI modules too, training, inference, optimization. They are not responsible for features. They just provide the engine, and a different division then translates it into actual user-facing features. So maybe this could be a good fit. I mean, the biggest job at Xbox is managing their studios, not playing games. And that means building tools for them to pool resources to work together. But one area where Sharma doesn't seem to have any experience in is hardware. This is yet more indication that Xbox is a software brand moving forward. Most of its value is in the studios and games Phil Spencer spent billions to buy. So what more is there to say? This news is shocking and simultaneously obvious in what it means for the lack of a future of Xbox as a hardware brand. As for how Sharma will do, well, it's going to be difficult for her to be worse than Phil Spencer, but reviving Xbox is going to take a lot of good work, hard work, and honestly, some luck. Yeah, this was a very last minute addition to this script. And then, wow, what do you think, Dan?
I don't know how much to say about this at a certain point. Like, I feel like Xbox has been at least as a hardware brand has been obviously dying for a while, and I do think we might be in kind of the death knells of Xbox at this point. Like, Sarah Bond was very obviously being groomed as, like,
yes,
I don't think that's like a big it's going out on a limb to say she was being groomed as Phil Spencer's successor. So to see her leave
and quit,
to see her quit,
something happened.
To see her quit means that like the direction Microsoft wants to take Xbox in clearly isn't in line with her, and I assume as a protege of Phil Spencer to some extent, the direction they wanted the brand to go. And yeah, I mean, that from Microsoft's perspective, I guess kind of makes sense. I think Xbox has been kind of a money sink for a long time now. And I think for a while, like when Phil Spencer first took over Xbox, he did a pretty good job being like a friendly face for Xbox and buying goodwill to people for Microsoft. And maybe that's the value Xbox had as a brand for a long time, is like, I think it was like their pro-consumer, more friendly side of Microsoft. And that kind of failed, or Phil Spencer failed to do that eventually. And I think, I don't know, he over time kind of started to look like more and more of an anti-consumer asshole as he kept buying up all of these, or as Microsoft and Xbox kept buying up all of these companies. And yeah, to see Sarah Bond leave as well, just to me says that whatever direction they were trying to take it in clearly failed. I don't know what that really spells for the future, or what Sharma spells for the future of Xbox, but I don't know. It seems to it seems to me that it's a departure, or maybe this is the manager to soft close or end the brand, or whatever they're going to do with it.
Yeah, and you know what I would also point out here, and it wasn't really in the write-up, but you know, it was in the title for this story, which was "As Devs Worry About a Rug Pull." This is something that I talked about. Actually, it was this leak came out on the last episode of Broken Silicon with Fan the Deck. By the way, I had a lot of fun talking to him. If you haven't watched that episode, highly recommend it. But in that episode, we were talking about the future of Xbox and, like, you know, what do developers think? Like, where are things going? And in that episode, I included a quote from devs, one that a dev I was talking to a few days before this recording, that said that they haven't received an update for their Xbox Series dev kit since October of 2025. And the update before that was in April of that same year. So 2 updates in 1 year, still no update in this new year for their dev kits. And then I was going to, for this leak, ask, how many times is Sony? And he's like, well, there's no point. It's like they did a few days ago, then a few weeks ago, and even the PS4 has been updated for its dev kits more often in this time frame.
It's not notable when it gets updated.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. And so this, with the destruction of the social clubs, this was a developer telling me like a sizable amount of our money, even if it is well behind PlayStation and Steam, comes from the Xbox ecosystem. And yet we're seemingly getting less and less software support from them. They're closing social clubs now. And that was, I believe, when I got all this information, like, yeah, I mean, like right after, I think actually would have been right before, of course, the Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond announcement. I'm sorry. Putting this all together, it's like they're firing anyone who seems to really care about gaming, hiring an AI person, and winding down software support for their console. That's still their main console. While Sony puts out more software support for the PS4 that they wish no one would still use, that they're like trying to get people to not use the PS4 at this point, and yet they're still supporting it better. I have a real worry here. Like the idea of Xbox Magnus being a hybrid console, I think is very exciting, and that it's like a consolation prize for Xbox faithful that the Dreamcast people never got, where they just woke up one day to news that their console would probably be worthless in about a year. And they just frankly chose the wrong one. Like Xbox Magnus would be, well, don't worry, your entire library will come over. And it still sounds like it probably will. But when I see stuff like this, it's like, well, are they going to do that? Are they going to launch like a $1,500 Xbox Magnus that has backwards compatibility and is a decent deal for a gaming PC? And then say, if you want to play the Xbox Series X game you bought, you have 1 year to get a Magnus, or you can't play it, or you have to start worrying about bugs becoming an issue because we're not patching the console anymore. Mm-hmm. That would still be such a crappy way to treat your fans, where they do still have tens of millions of people using Xbox consoles. They do.
Oh, yeah, and they've done that to some extent before with, what was it, the Microsoft shop or whatever they call the
Games for Windows Live.
Games for Windows Live,
right. The only way I could buy Age of Empires 3 digitally was I didn't want to keep putting in like 10 discs with all the expansions. And the laptops didn't even have disc players anymore by this time. This would have been probably like early 2000s, mid 2000s. And so there's like Games for Windows Live, and they have Age of Empires 3. I buy it there, and then they close that shop and don't give you a refund. Mind you, I got BioShock on PC through GameFly, and they
honored it.
Gave me a way to get the game again on Steam. And actually, I got BioShock Remastered for free because I have BioShock on Steam from a GameFly account from the 2000s.
Yeah.
So GameFly is a more reliable place to buy Microsoft or buy Windows games or whatever you want to say than Microsoft is on their own operating system with Games for Windows Live. And that type of thing in the past makes me worry they might do this. They might just say, hey, sorry, you can't play your games anymore. Oops. I mean, Sony did it with what they used to sell TV shows and movies on PlayStations. And then I don't know if you can still download them or not, but I don't think you can. I think they just removed what you paid for. To do that to like the main use of the device is insane, though.
Yeah. And I guess for a more hopeful note to end on, like, I hope optimistically, like, what this means is that they're more looking to fold their ecosystems into one another, and like Xbox and Windows become more one and the same at a certain point, because I do think it's a little ass backwards having these two separate ecosystems. Although to some extent, maybe you could view Xbox as being shielded from the Windows ecosystem, because wow, Windows is also annoying as shit sometimes.
Yeah. So, none of this doomsday stuff is confirmed. I'm not saying this is what's going to happen. I want to be clear about that before we move on to the final story, which, wow, this is a pretty big episode, actually. But I mean, devs are worried about a rug pull coming, and then Sarah Bond quits.
Yeah.
It looks like she may have had fundamental disagreements with how they were going to handle the future of Xbox. It just doesn't instill confidence. Again, I've been saying this for a while. You should not be buying games on Xbox, guys. I'm sorry. Yeah. Get it on Steam, or get a PlayStation, get a Switch. This is not looking good.
No.
All right. Let us move on then to the final story. Story number 8. U.S. Supreme Court strikes down Trump's global tariffs, quoting from Reuters. for the write-up. The U.S. Supreme Court struck down Trump's sweeping tariffs that he pursued under a law meant for use in national emergencies, handing the Republican president a stinging defeat in a landmark ruling on Friday with major implications for the global economy. The 6-3 decision, authored by conservative Chief Justice John Roberts, provoked a furious reaction from Trump, who denounced the justices who ruled against him. Trump said other alternatives are available to him to pursue tariffs, and immediately announced a 10% global tariff under a legal authority different from the one at the issue in the case, over and above our normal tariffs already being charged, according to Trump. Justice Brett Kavanaugh, in a dissent joined by fellow conservatives Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, so the usual yes men that do whatever Trump tells them, wrote that the ruling did not necessarily foreclose Trump from imposing most, if not all, of the same sort of tariffs under other statutory authorities, adding that the court's decision is not likely to greatly restrict presidential tariff authority moving forward. Kavanaugh, I would say that's immaterial for if it is legal. It doesn't matter if doesn't matter anyways. You're supposed to rule on what is legally true. So it sounds like Kavanaugh almost agrees it was illegal, but there's other ways he can do things. So it's okay to be illegal. You're the Supreme Court. Okay. Yep. Anyways, yay, the tariffs are gone. Kinda, for now, sort of. The good news is that the tariffs were being decreed by Trump are gone so far, yet while the immediate reaction can be one of relief, you have to think, has anything really changed? The largest issue of these sorts of tariffs, as we've covered all last year, was the chaos. It was the uncertainty. And that chaos is certainly not going away, like we keep saying here. In fact, Trump is already decreeing new tariffs using different legalities. These will have to be tried by the Supreme Court again, and who knows how future cases will go. Maybe Trump will win that other one. Maybe he'll lose a future one. Does anyone think he won't try again, though? Although we will say this, I added this to this, Republicans are starting to act, not complain off the record to journalists, but actually act in a way that signals they might start to outright vote to block more and more of Trump's tariffs. I don't remember where it was. I couldn't find it right before we started, but I did see that some Republicans said they already have the votes to strike down Trump's new tariffs, and they might. So we'll see. That Congress, this might be the beginning of Congress actually demonstrating they have power of the purse, which is in the Constitution they're supposed to. But even still, though, the uncertainty remains. New tariffs are imposed to replace those new tariffs are imposed to replace those deemed illegal. A new court case will surely follow. And in the meanwhile, the companies affected can now ask for refunds, potentially costing the U.S. government $150 billion per Prof G markets. And even if this decision holds, even if the tariff madness ends, the friendly global trade regime is over. A lot of the damage was already done anyways now. Nobody trusts the U.S. anymore. Nobody is going to play nice with the U.S. anymore. And what Trump destroyed in weeks will take decades to restore if it can be restored. And until then, well, U.S. manufacturing is continuing to collapse. Inflation remains above the Fed's 2% target, and U.S. consumers will continue to randomly pay extra taxes on goods because, remember, tariffs are a tax on U.S. consumers. So what do you think, Dan?
I mean, I think the first issue like to bring up here is just, I think seeing stuff like this is obviously on its face good news. Well, I'm sure.
I think it is.
I'm sure some people will disagree with that, but I think it's good news to not pointlessly pay more for stuff. Ask Brazilians about their $1,000 PS3s.
I think they may have actually been like 3,000 or 4. It depends when it was made, but
first though, the problem is you're going to see the imposition of these new tariffs or whatever he tries to apply, because this has been the constant ebb and flow of the past. I was going to say 2 years, but it's only been a year. Where, okay, so he's going to impose new tariffs and it's going to filter up to the Supreme Court, and then maybe they'll strike it down again, maybe they won't. The problem is there's going to be all that uncertainty for, I don't know, probably the next year as it filters up into the Supreme Court. At least the next
month. I mean,
it's going to take more than a month to get there. So like,
well, there's always going to be some, because he's going to claim that he can do a thing, and then there's going to be the question of if anyone holds him accountable. This is going to continue to be uncertain until Congress
or
immediately
or Congress
strikes it
could
down.
Do its job and just end this, but they're not going to. Well, I hope I'm wrong about that. Hopefully they do. There's the uncertainty that just happens because there's constantly a new tariff every week or every day or every month, however long it is, or however long it takes to get to whoever gets to him and says, "Hey, end this." Like,
however close his little hands are to his phone to tweet out a tariff.
Yeah,
that's how long it takes to do a tariff. Apparently, as you just tweet.
It's just complete chaos and uncertainty at all times because he says a thing and then people disagree with him, and then he just decides to do basically the same thing with some other tenuous power or tenuous claim for power for why he can do it again. And that's just what we're going to keep seeing. And because of that, you're going to see prices just probably still go up a lot of the time because companies like certainty, even if that certainty is maybe they have to pay some import tariff that gets passed on to you. Well,
let me be clear about that too, because there will be some people that will already be typing, well, inflation didn't go up. Guys, the target inflation rate is 2%. By the way, as someone that sometimes thinks of himself as a libertarian, I don't know that the 2% target, that didn't come from Jesus Christ, people. Like, that's also, some people would argue, a little high, but I get the argument for it. It's still not below 2%. And a lot of the data that's come out has shown that what they're reporting is nonsense. I mean, they just adjusted the figures for last year's unemployment numbers, for example, and they were way worse than we thought they were, So, I mean, I just want to be clear about that, because there will be people that say inflation didn't go up. It absolutely has. Open your goddamn eyes and go in a grocery store. You can see it firsthand, no matter what they're trying to claim. And the target is 2%. And even their own numbers that most people think are pretty wrong right now are above 2%. The goal isn't have a 2 somewhere in there. The goal is below 2%, not 2.9 or 2.7%. So let's just be very clear.
Yeah, and then there's the other angle to it where we're just taking an axe to every relationship we've ever had, and
we being America,
and the U.S. isn't. That doesn't mean that the people will completely stop you working with the U.S., but it means that they have to factor in the fact that I don't know what we've done to global trade. I feel like is the equivalent of somebody going all in on a friendly game of poker and then pulling a gun out and threatening everyone. And
then it turns out there was no ammo in the gun, but they do it every time. And sometimes a bullet does go off.
Yeah, but then they start laughing and pretending, see, like the gun was fake, but then like you actually find he just forgot to load it, or like he has the magazine in his pocket. He just forgot to load it because he's an idiot.
Like that's still not someone you want to play poker with.
Yeah. So like when the U.S. is a huge power, like they're going to have to keep dealing with the U.S. But why would you voluntarily put yourself in that situation? Like it's stupid. And
you
things
wouldn't
are
put
going to go up
everything
in price.
Right.
Manufacturing is going to collapse because of that. Like
because a lot of U.S. businesses actually depend on importing.
Yeah, or exporting, because we also sell a lot of stuff to people, and that why would they want that?
Look what's happening. I was just in Louisville. I mean, the bourbon industry is being destroyed there right now.
Yep.
But so I mean, I guess what I would say is I still think this is definitely good news.
It is.
I mean, were the Supreme Court to rule that the president can do this, oh my God, could you have? And everyone always like forgets like. There will probably be other U.S. presidents besides Trump. Like, if the power that would have been handed to the presidency, if they didn't rule this way, would have been absurd for future presidents, left or right, doesn't matter. And by the way, there's a lot of Democrats that have wanted a lot of tariffs for a while. They imagine some former ones just came in and just were like tariffs everywhere. And they're like, that's not something we want the president to be able to do. There's a reason Congress has to go through some messy process to do something like that, or they're supposed to, because it's actually quite a big deal if you do that. So I'd say there's no way around it. It is good news. I just think it's too soon to say how good the news is, because, I've listened to some legal experts talking about this over the weekend, and I do think a decent amount of them point out things like, well, you never know. This could be the start actually of Congress being reasserted as a co-equal branch to the president if the Supreme Court slowly rules more and more and more, you can't do this, you can't do this, and more importantly, Congress has to do this. It's not may do this, it's shall do this. You shall be the one that approves it, not you can if you want to be the one to do it.
New check and balance. The check is the Supreme Court yells at Congress to do their job.
Yeah, tells Congress to be a branch of government. Like, it's too soon to say if that's where this goes. But when I saw some Republicans already saying that they're going to strike down more tariffs. I'm not just talking about the Canada stuff as well, but like I saw some already saying they're getting ready to maybe strike down some of the stuff with Trump that he just said. There is a sense here that if this other stuff goes straight to the Supreme Court strikes this down too and just keeps doing it. And then just starts writing in more and more rulings like the president's, to be clear, is Congress has to do these things. Then Congress starts showing backbone. This would be the start of the walk back. And that would restore some more safety in the global economy, you know, like some
normalcy, maybe.
Normalcy. Yeah. Like comfort that the future may not look like the past.
Yeah.
You know, so I'd say this is good news no matter what. Having said that.
There's a lot of caveats for me, but it is unequivocally good news that this happened.
Yes. Well, and I want to say, because I've seen a lot of people in the comments too, again, this is a gaming hardware podcast, and this absolutely affects gaming hardware. Like, well, they'll just eat all the costs. I mean, they'll just keep the prices high. That's what I'm just saying. I don't think they all will. You've seen a lot of PC manufacturing companies go through a lot of problems with how things have been affected by tariffs, how prices have been affected by them. Will Nvidia instantly lower prices on graphics cards? Well, no, but that's also because of other reasons. Will some monitor manufacturers start dropping prices? I actually think maybe. So this will cause materially, I think, within a few months, some prices probably to go down in gaming hardware. Some, not RAM necessarily, anything with RAM in it, but other things. I think it will affect those things. And this is very good news for the next gen consoles and graphics cards. Like, because you have to remember, like, I guess like RDNA 4 and Blackwell launched around the tariffs, and we had so much coverage last year. Like, you could see there was like the pre and the post tariff graphics cards or something, and it was obvious. Like, they went up in price in 1 month, like immediately, but then came down a little. For the tons of products coming out next year, this is very good news, because I think by then there will be much more stability in trade.
Yeah, and I do think a lot of the time in like online like comments online, there is a knee-jerk reaction towards like borderline like extreme or absurd cynicism sometimes, where it's like,
who can be the most black-pilled? You're so cool.
Yeah, like I get that you can talk about like the profit motive of companies, and if you take the maximalist approach or the most extreme view of that, it's like, well, then why doesn't they'll always sell something for a higher price. So why doesn't Nvidia sell the 5090 for $50,000 or something? Like, because no one would buy it. And more people will buy it, will buy these devices if they're cheaper. So like, sure, maybe the profit margin on an individual unit is a little bit smaller, but you're going to sell a lot more if you're going to sell a lot more 5090s if the 5090 is $2,000.
And that will always be a factor. Yeah. And the removal of tariffs will mean that there's at least some fat that won't be there, that that they won't raise the price more because of it. So this is good news. And no, I don't think all prices are going to drop immediately. We also have a RAM shortage going on right now. But I do think you will. And again, there's going to be no way to prove it because we don't have an alternate reality. You know, this isn't the show Devs where we could just simulate with a quantum computer what's going on in another timeline. What we can do, though, is say now some products that had a ridiculous 20, 50, who knows, I don't even keep track of it anymore, % tariff on them is not there. And if their sales have been hurting, they will now lower prices some. So there will be some things that for sure will be cheaper later this year than they would have been. I think so. Mm-hmm. I can't promise you which ones or how much. But this is, there will be. And this is good news. They won't all companies say we're going to keep prices high. They won't all do that. They won't.
Yeah.
All right. Let us now move on to the wrap up. These are the stories that do not deserve a full conversation, but definitely deserve a mention. The first one here, Dan, Bartlett Lake.
Thank
Carmen
God.
probably really wanted to add this one because he thinks we need to keep talking about Bartlett Lake.
I do want to talk about Bartlett Lake more.
But there's not much to say here. We have the lineup. It's leaked, I think. Did they say what it was officially? No, it's a leaker. Jake, and I recognize him. He's usually right. Yeah, I mean, what? It's like 5.9 gigahertz single threading. So again, like, who cares? Raptor Lake went higher than this.
They're finally going to take the performance crown with Bartlett Lake, Tom.
I mean, yeah.
Mark my words.
Again, not a full conversation, but that's happening. Another thing here, Sony just said they're going to prioritize monetization of the user base over more unit sales for this year versus the previous or next, in case they have trouble manufacturing enough PlayStations. I just want to say, not good news, but this is another example of Tom was right, that I know that I said, and this was true at the time, that PlayStation had more reserves of RAM than Xbox or anyone else. And that was true. I mean, they're still probably, right now, the PS5 is probably the most cost-effective device you can pretty much buy. Having said that, like I think I pointed out in the last Broken Silicon episode, from what I have been hearing, it is actually becoming an issue, and that might change. And Sony saying something like this means they're worried about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, if you need a PS5, I would just get it. Steam Deck is out of stock, and I believe Valve openly acknowledged it's because of RAM. Again, not a coincidence this happens when they don't admit it, but they did delay the Steam machine. AMD is a new marketing chief. I don't have a whole lot to say about this person, except that
hopefully
couldn't be worse than before.
Hopefully you do better than the past.
Also, this one's fun for me. AMD put out a video, the 9070 XT, which of course is well known to clock very high, just hit an overclocking record for, I believe, the highest clock speed hit by a graphics card, and that is 4.73 gigahertz. By the way, the top comment, at least as of when I checked, let me see if it's still there. It's several. There's some new ones, but it is, how about getting FSR4 to work on the 7000 series? Or I can't wait to overclock my 9070 XT with FSR under Vulkan. Oh, wait, it doesn't have that. Like, most of the comments are, could we overclock RDNA 3 to get FSR4? I think this is going to becoming a bigger and bigger PR F up for AMD. They need to add FSR4 officially to RDNA.
Yes, they do.
Let's see here. Yeah, there's something going on here with Xbox Ally X failures. It's not something I've dug into, nor do I really care much about this because I've always been told the volume's pretty low. But multiple people have reported they broke, and Asus is saying they're having high repair volumes. Kerry Nosugata pointing this out to me. High repair volumes, they aren't making a lot of them. So what percentage of these are broken? So just an FYI that a lot of Ally X's seem to be breaking. The only thing I might say is maybe that was the canned answer an Asus representative said. Maybe they just don't have the RAM to repair them.
Oh, I guess.
I don't know. I just want to throw that idea out there.
Yeah, that
I know that's already an issue for Xbox, by the way. They don't have the RAM to repair it.
That's kind of creating a PR nightmare, though, to say high repair volume if the issue is we can't repair it. Although both of those don't look good, I suppose.
No. Intel drops ARC branding. We already, again, talked about that in a ton of detail in the latest die shrink. So if you want our full take on, honestly, the misreporting around what was said, I actually, maybe I'll pull up some of those pictures here so that Gerard can also drop them in. But I will say the long and the short of it is, I probably should say this in the full Broken Silicon, is that there seems to be mistranslating of what was said at IT Home. And if you actually look at the direct Chinese, and I double checked it in a couple places, they don't confirm anything about Celestial. They don't confirm anything about future ARC architectures. All they confirm is that they will update you on the status of ARC every year now. Because the biggest problem for their partners, Intel's partners, were that they literally had an out-of-date roadmap and just kept referring to it and saying, we have nothing to say at this time.
Yeah. It's like, or insisting that that roadmap was still what they were doing if we go further back in the past.
Yes, exactly. So they didn't commit that anything new is coming. If you actually read the direct translation and like run it through a few AI checkers, like they'll look at this and go, oh no, like it's just like they're saying we expect we'll see Druid. We expect we'll do this. All they confirmed is they're going to make AI chips for data center and that they will not be radio silent in the future.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. They did not confirm anything about XE4. All of that was speculation or mistranslation.
You will continue to see press conferences from Intel.
Which is more than they could have said before, which is the sad thing. Now, good news, Alchemist is getting a lot of the latest features and updates to drivers that are being made for Panther Lake, but Alchemist still gets it. I tested a Meteor Lake book. I will say, yeah, I don't think it really aged Meteor Lake better than Hawkpoint, if anything worse, but it is getting a lot of the latest XE features. Mm-hmm. And that's pathetic. Alchemist is getting all of this when Phoenix came out. Before that, actually, right? Yeah. Hawkpoint came out with Meteor Lake, and Hawkpoint does not have FSR 4. Again, we're not going to stop banging that drum. All right, final reader mail to this extra long episode, a girthy episode, if you will.
Nope.
AI Immutable Chief writes in and says, have you heard anything about some of the DDR5 wafers in cold storage with OpenAI starting to move into actual kits that will be deployed soon? Or is there a time horizon for that to begin happening? As a consumer, it sucks to not be able to buy RAM, but it'd be good to get some closure on the fact that the wafers are actually being put to use rather than the dog in the manger approach that seems to be the driving factor at the moment. Yeah, for those who don't remember, I put out one of my bigger leaks so far. Was it of this year or was it late last year? It was last year. About OpenAI kind of just playing dirty and buying up a bunch of the world's RAM intentionally to screw over the market.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really followed up on it yet. And it's just funny. I guess AI Immutable Chief is saying, could we at least know if they're using it? So we know if their evil scheme was anything more than an evil scheme.
Did it at least find a good home?
Yeah. What I can say is I don't really have any updates for that now. I did reach out to a source who's probably going to get back to me soon that there might be somewhere I can tell you next week or in a couple weeks, but I don't have anything to add right now. I'm trying to think if there would be anything else we could look for. The only thing I can add is that leak I put out about the Samsung SSD is it's happened. It's just no one's reporting on it now that I'm right. Very cool. But yeah. All right. I think that's it. I am exhausted. Talked a lot on this one too. These were some long write-ups. But Dan, any final words? Any final words?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Remember, subscribe, comment down below, share, hype us with the hype points. Check out that RTX 5090 Ti leak I just put out. It seems to have been buried. Please, that was a decent amount of effort. And there's a rather fun kind of old school Moore's Law is Dead section. That's the last half of it explaining strategy at Nvidia and Intel right now. Please check out that video, share that one as well. And then besides that, subscribe to Broken Silicon on your podcast app of choice. I already said subscribe to Moore's Law is Dead, I believe I did. Okay. Or maybe I didn't. Subscribe to that as well.
Rate the bell on button. iTunes. I don't know.
Rated on iTunes, Broken Silicon, and then also join Moore's Law is Dead on Patreon, where you will get access to bonus episodes like Die Shrink, like we've talked about, a Discord, ability to ask us questions. Who's next? High Yield is the next guest fan favorite. After that, it seems likely I might have Colin Moriarty or Dustin from Sacred Symbols. There's a lot of console stuff, so I will be reaching out to some people to bring these people on. And otherwise, yeah. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a good week, everybody.
Goodbye.
This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carmen Cry and Carrie Nosugada as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the About/Support page. In the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Carrie Nosugada as well. You can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month, and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and John Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong, we love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans, much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guest questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and websites like Reddit, and give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels: Brad Medlin, Drita Foles, Z-Jits, Daniel D, Nicholas Buckner, Deke, Toka, Aaron Close, Jan Rauner, MJB1, Daniel Hyde, GZ Ziggy, SNES Chalmers, Jem Ferrier, Velcom Alev, Jensen Wang, Sarcastro, Compressed AI Blocks, Chris Rich, Evan Dingle, Hal Booma, Shredburb, Sammy Malas, Chris Anthinos, The Boss Haas, Tommy, Jonathan, Jake Dude 23, Jake Martin, Zlicky, Gamers Unite, Ian Clifford, Mead and Pork, Tim Robb, Travis Gooding, Win Wang, Amiable Chief, Zoot Suit Taylor, Mads, I Should, Patty Cakes, Greg, Michael McGee, Stephen Coates, Mark Mitchell, James Anderson, Mark Raidmaker, Salty Internet Pirate, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, Cameron, Michelle Pell, Hexapuma, and Matthew Cassells, Teak Autumn, Reginald Ari, Little Germany, Winstar, James I. Raider, Shay, Milton, Brett Jones, Chuck Glidden, Stephen Dick, McDaffie, Justin Bustle, Austin Haggerty, Joe Fit, Brian Scanlon, Dan M. 1988, Hardland, Brian Wright, Slushbot, Jansen, Angema, The Forbidden Juice, RB Racer, John Swin, Bing Bong 3, Solarized 80, Albert Gun Keekum, Sprutnik, Brian P, Hoodat 42, Cornster 671, Penta Winta, Omega Doge, Hugo, Ender Kiwi, Mr. Tiger, John Wick Boomstick, Penguins of AI, Smash Axley, Porcelain Oats, Nick Zuzmania, Kareem Almazri, AI Soldier 789, Rye Hill, Chi Bulls, Manolis Radkusis, Kevin Kuntz, Bespoke, Ilarium, Jonathan Harris, Fred Berger, Kellen Reichel, Kainush Kagani, Johnny Transabur, Ahmed, Josh, Dominique Parseri, Arkeo RK0, Zephyrin, Angel of Cake, and of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.